I'd like to tell you a story this morning that's about homeschooling, and it is about a girl called Susie, who perhaps found it a little bit harder than most. Sometimes Susie felt that she was born to be unlucky. Back in March, her whole family had moved away from her friends and her grandparents. Her mum had got a really good new job, and that was great, but she didn't like moving. And then within a week of arriving, the country had gone into lockdown. Mum's new job was no longer on offer, so she spent all her waking hours job hunting, while Dad worked extra hours on his computer to make enough money. And in the midst of all of this, Susie was thrust into online homeschooling with teachers and a class that she had never met. Sitting alone at the kitchen table, Susie didn't dare connect with the morning class video call. The thought of all the new faces all staring at her made her shudder. Instead, each morning she signed into her online learning portal and got to work on the exercises. If she did enough work, she hoped that the teacher would be kind to her when lockdown ended. The trouble was, she was totally out of her depth. After 3 weeks, she still had no idea what a split digraph was, and her maths was a total mess. In fact, with nobody watching her, she'd taken to playing Minecraft whenever it was time to do maths. Nobody was watching, and she didn't understand it anyway, so what was the point? She found the videos from her class teacher stressful, and what was worse was that she had 4 or 5 unread chat messages in the classroom from Mrs. Callahan, who was her new headmistress. There was no way she was going to read them. She already knew what they would be saying. You need to try harder. We're a school for hard-working students, that kind of thing. Every time she saw another message from Callahan Mrs., she shuddered. Then one day, out of nowhere, came the phone call. Susie rushed to answer, as she always did. Mum and Dad were on video calls and mustn't be disturbed. On the other end was the school receptionist, clearly short of time and very brief. Once she had established that Susie's parents were both unavailable, she addressed Susie. Just to let you know that you've got a visitor coming round from the school in about an hour or so. Thanks, bye. Susie panicked. What if it was her class teacher? What if it was Mrs. Callahan? She flicked over to her maths and desperately tried to work out the first question, but she didn't even understand what it meant. She glanced up at the wall. 45 minutes, 40 minutes, 30 minutes. The time was flying past. 20 minutes, 15 minutes. What was she going to do? She briefly toyed with the idea of pretending she wasn't home, but then her parents would have to stop work to answer the door, and then it would be even worse. Perhaps she could pretend to be mad. Nope, that wasn't going to cut it either. 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes. The doorbell rang. On the step stood a woman so young and fresh-faced behind her face mask that she could still be at college. You must be Susie, she said. My name's Vera. Can I come in? Susie didn't know what to say or what to do, so she simply led the stranger through to the kitchen, mouthing "school" to her mum as she passed the doorway to her office, and she put the kettle on because she knew that would be polite. Vera sat across the kitchen table from Susie, took off her mask, and sipped at her tea. The silence hung in the air until Susie could bear it no longer. I can't do the work, and I haven't done the work, and I don't know how to do the work, and I don't know anybody, and I'm sorry, but I just can't do it. The words tumbled out any old how, and Susie didn't care that a few tears squeezed out too. She knew that this lady, whoever she was, would be angry. She knew she was failing at school, but she simply couldn't pretend any longer. But to her surprise, Vera didn't get angry. It's okay, she said calmly. I'm here to help you, not to get angry. Things must have been hard for you, moving just before lockdown. I imagine you must be missing your friends. Tell me about it. Totally disarmed by the gentle words, Susie hesitated, then started to speak. She shared about her mum's new job, about the move, about her old friends who she only saw once a week on Zoom, the difficulty of not knowing anyone, and her utter dread of Mrs. Callahan. Vera listened patiently, never interrupting except to agree that it was a really hard situation. And then they opened up her English work and spent half an hour looking it over together. By the end, it seemed a lot less daunting. Only once did she look stern, when Susie said that she couldn't get the maths work to load on her laptop. Vera looked her straight in the eyes and said, That's not quite true, is it, Susie? And Susie suddenly found that it was easier to simply tell the truth. I gave up and started playing Minecraft instead. Vera didn't bat an eyelid, but said steadily, "Thank you for being honest. You know that you need to stop doing that now, don't you?" And it was true. Susie did know that she had to stop it and felt that perhaps she could. Finally, a couple of hours later, Vera stood up to leave. Putting her cup in the sink, she walked with Susie back to the front door and let herself out. She turned on the doorstep, caught sight of Susie's expression and said, "There's something else you want to say, isn't there?" It's Mrs. Callahan," said Susie. "She's already sent me lots of messages. I know I've fallen behind, but I'm going to try to catch up, but I don't want her to be angry with me and tell my parents that I'm lazy or stupid. What's she like? Does she get angry? Can you try to explain to her for me, please?" "I don't need to explain anything to her," Vera said. And even though she now had her face mask on again, Susie could see from her eyes that she was smiling. "You already have. My name's Vera Callahan, and it's been lovely getting to know you, Susie." Then she smiled, turned, and walked back to the car. Now, Jesus often explained what God was like by telling stories just like that story about Susie. You see, Susie didn't know what the head teacher was like, but she expected her to be strict and angry. The head teacher was trying to help Susie, but because Susie didn't know that her head teacher was good, the only way through to her was to pay her a visit so Susie could see and hear what she was like. And when she visited, even though she was stern about playing games during maths, she didn't come to condemn Susie or to get angry, but to help her. Susie didn't recognize her until the very end because she didn't look or act like she'd expected. And this is what the Bible tells us about God. We didn't know him or believe that he was good and kind, so he came to visit us, to show us what he's like and to help us. Not everybody recognized him, but eventually many did. One of his followers and friends, a man called John, wrote it like this in the book that he wrote in the Bible. "The Word, that is God, became human and made his home among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." At Christmas, we celebrate Jesus coming to visit us, God made human, to show us that he is good and full of grace and truth.